For decades, the United States has been the world's top supplier of military equipment, from fighter jets to missile systems. American defense exports have shaped the balance of power across continents, influencing not just battlefields, but also the political landscape of entire regions. The Made in America label on military hardware has symbolized quality, advanced technology, and a strong partnership with Washington. For many countries, owning American-made weapons is a mark of prestige and a sign of close ties to the U.S. government. This dominance has fortified alliances and created a massive industry supporting millions of jobs and driving innovation. The defense sector is a cornerstone of the American economy, fueling research and development that often leads to new technologies in both military and civilian life. Nations buy American arms for access to cutting-edge tech and to strengthen diplomatic ties with the U.S. These purchases are often about more than just hardware. They're about building trust and securing a place within a powerful global network. These deals often include training, maintenance, and interoperability with U.S. forces, making America a long-term defense partner. This ongoing cooperation ensures that American influence extends far beyond the initial sale. Companies like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Raytheon invest billions in research, leading to breakthroughs that spill over into civilian tech. Innovations in aerospace, cybersecurity, and communications often start in the defense sector before transforming everyday life. Global demand has kept American factories busy and cemented the U.S. as the arsenal for many allies. The steady flow of exports has helped maintain America's industrial base and technological edge, but relying on a single supplier creates vulnerabilities. Political or economic disputes can quickly disrupt partnerships. Shifts in U.S. foreign policy or export controls can leave allies scrambling for alternatives. In 2025, this foundation is being shaken as once reliable customers question their dependence on American arms. Concerns over supply chain security and shifting alliances are prompting a reevaluation of long-standing relationships. Countries are now seeking alternatives, aiming for greater strategic independence. New suppliers are emerging, and nations are investing in their own defense industries to reduce reliance on the U.S. The established order in the global arms market is under threat, as the world's military landscape enters a period of rapid change and uncertainty. 2025 marks a turning point, not just in the calendar, but in the very fabric of international defense relations. The global arms trade, long dominated by a handful of powerful nations, is now facing a dramatic upheaval. In a move that few predicted, India and China, two countries often at odds, have come together to impose steep tariffs specifically targeting American-made military equipment. These new tariffs are not minor adjustments. They represent a seismic shift, making U.S. weapons prohibitively expensive and effectively shutting out American defense firms from two of the world's largest and fastest-growing markets. The impact was immediate. The move is a direct challenge to the U.S. military-industrial complex, sending shockwaves through the industry and rattling investors worldwide. For India, this represents a dramatic reversal from its previous strategy, which had focused on steadily increasing American arms purchases to modernize its military. The message from both nations is clear: continued U.S. pressure and unilateral policies will cost American companies lucrative contracts and long-standing partnerships. With tariffs set at unprecedented levels, buying American arms is now nearly impossible for these nations, forcing them to look elsewhere for their defense needs. India and China's coordination, despite their historic rivalries, signals the emergence of a new economic alliance, one that is willing to set aside differences to counter U.S. dominance in the global arms market. Other nations are watching closely. If they too feel pressured by Washington, this bold move could inspire similar actions, potentially reshaping the entire landscape of international arms trade. The long-held assumption that access to American military technology outweighs political costs is now being seriously questioned by governments around the world. A new precedent is being set. Nations are now willing to sacrifice access to U.S. technology in order to protect their sovereignty and assert their independence on the world stage. As a result, the global arms market is entering a far more unpredictable and fragmented era, where alliances shift and new players rise to challenge the old order. The tariffs imposed by India and China were not random or isolated. They were a direct response to a series of escalating actions by the United States, signaling a new phase in global trade tensions. The immediate catalyst was the Trump administration's decision to slap a 25% tariff on all Indian goods, effectively doubling the total duties to 50%. This move sent shockwaves through Indian markets and was seen as a major escalation in trade policy. Officially, the US justified these tariffs by pointing to India's continued purchase of Russian oil, a move Washington strongly opposed due to its own sanctions on Moscow. The US saw this as undermining its efforts to isolate Russia economically. President Trump's public remarks, where he labeled India a dead economy, only added fuel to the fire, inflaming public opinion and further straining diplomatic ties. For India, these actions were not just about economics. They were seen as disrespectful and coercive, coming from a nation that was supposed to be a strategic partner and ally. China quickly joined India, both to support its stance and to push back against what it perceives as US economic bullying. This move was as much about principle as it was about policy. This rare alignment between India and China, despite their long-standing disputes, highlights how a shared grievance against US pressure can outweigh even deep-rooted rivalries. The tariffs are more than just economic measures. They are a clear declaration of strategic autonomy and a statement of intent on the world stage. By imposing these tariffs, India and China are asserting their right to choose their own energy sources, trade partners, and security policies, free from US interference or pressure. While the American tariffs may have been the spark, the reality is that the relationship between these nations was already under significant strain, with years of growing mistrust and competition. Now, both India and China are willing to risk disrupting billions of dollars in arms trade and other economic ties to defend their sovereignty and send a message to Washington. The message is clear. India and China will not be dictated to by Washington, and they are prepared to stand together, at least for now, in defense of their national interests. The fallout was immediate. Major US-India arms deals worth billions were abruptly halted. Negotiations for Stryker armored vehicles and Javelin missiles, once seen as done deals, are now frozen. The biggest casualty, India's planned purchase of 6 P-8Y Poseidon aircraft from Boeing, a $3.6 billion deal. The Indian defense minister's cancelled trip to Washington underscored the diplomatic freeze. While officials downplay the pause, industry insiders confirm talks have stopped. American assembly lines now face uncertainty, waiting for a political breakthrough that may not come soon. The once booming US-India arms business has ground to a halt. The sudden halt in Indian arms sales is rippling through the American defense industry. For giants like Boeing and Lockheed Martin, these deals represented years of planning and billions in expected revenue. The loss creates a financial hole, impacting jobs across the supply chain, from engineers to assembly line workers. Companies may slow production, delay hiring, or even lay off workers tied to these contracts. The industry thrives on predictability. Now political risk makes future business far more difficult. Other countries may see American suppliers as less reliable, turning to Russia, France, or China instead. Investor confidence is shaken, with stock prices reacting to the uncertainty. The crisis is a stark reminder: US defense fortunes are tied to global diplomacy. In response, India is strengthening ties with China and Russia. Prime Minister Modi's visit to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in China was a clear signal to Washington. Modi's warm interactions with Xi Jinping and Putin showed a pragmatic shift, setting aside rivalries to counter US pressure. India is pursuing multi-alignment, refusing to be tied to any single superpower. Its historic defense relationship with Russia is growing stronger, especially as US tariffs push them closer. While some US-India cooperation continues, India is now actively balancing its partnerships. By deepening ties with China and Russia, India is asserting its independence and strategic autonomy. The message: India will chart its own course on the global stage. The crisis marks a turning point for America's military industry. If US-India relations don't improve, paused deals could become permanent losses, shutting out American firms for years. Other nations may hesitate to buy American arms, fearing sudden policy shifts or tariffs. The US risks losing its dominant share of the global arms market and weakening its alliances. Defense companies must now navigate a complex geopolitical landscape where politics matter as much as technology. They may push for more stable US foreign policy to protect their business. The future of America's military industry depends on choices made in Washington. The next few years will decide if this is a temporary setback or the start of a lasting decline.